with its effectiveness. Statistical variation, seeing the forest from the trees. Another potential detour on the road to truth is the nature of statistical variation and people's tendency to misjudge through overgeneralization. Often in the fitness world, someone who appears to have above-average physical characteristics or capabilities is assumed to be a legitimate authority. The problem with granting authority to appearance is that a large part of an individual's expression of such above-average physical characteristics and capabilities could simply be the result of wild variations across a statistical landscape. For instance, if you look out over a canopy of trees, you will probably notice a lone tree or two rising up above the rest, and it's completely within human nature to notice things that stand out in such a way. In much the same manner, we take notice of individuals who possess superior physical capabilities, and when we do, there is a strong tendency to identify these people as sources of authority. To make matters worse, many people who happen to possess such abnormal physical capabilities frequently misidentify themselves as sources of authority, taking credit for something that nature has, in essence, randomly dropped in their laps. In other words, people are intellectually prepared to overlook the role of statistical variation in attributing authority. This human tendency to misapply our cognitive generalizing capabilities in the face of statistical rarities has been explored in detail in books such as Fooled by Randomness, The Hidden Role of Chance in the Markets and Life, 2nd edition, Random House 2005, and The Black Swan, The Impact of the Highly Improbable, Random House and Penguin Press 2007, both by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. As used by Taleb, a black swan is a freak random variation occurring in nature that people immediately seize upon, analogous to the tall tree sticking up out of the canopy. They then attempt to formulate a rational explanation to account for its existence. The usage derives from an old Western belief that all swans were white because no one had ever seen a black one. When a black swan was discovered in 17th century Australia, the term came to be associated with something that was perceived to be impossible, but that actually came into existence. This concept of statistical variation applies not just to physical attributes such as athletic ability, muscle size, or height, but also to phenomena such as the marketplace. Taleb cites the wild success of the search engine Google as an example of a black swan in the business world. When people see such a tremendous business success, they are compelled to ask, how did that happen? The founder of the business naturally believes at some level that he or she did have a mechanism for achieving this amazing milestone. In some instances, the founders will endeavor to explain their method to anyone willing to pay to hear about it. The problem is that a large part of all success is based on a huge statistical variation that has nothing necessarily to do with a direct cause and effect. That is why one can find experts offering contradictory advice on almost every subject, including health and fitness. In essence, what you have are two or more different trees sticking out of the canopy, and they have risen to such impressive heights not because of anything they did or did not do, but because of a statistical variation that gave them this advantage. In fact, what these two anomalies actually did may have been two entirely different things. But because they were both naturally predisposed to have success in this realm, they were likely predisposed to make the same cognitive mistake of thinking, what I did caused this to happen, even if the techniques that these two people employed were diametrically opposed. This state of affairs is not necessarily a deception on anyone's part. It's a natural mistake of the human cognitive process, because this process is set up to make generalizations and wide inferences based on observed data. Most of the time, this approach has proved to be an effective means of finding out what works, but it's most accurate when applied to the forest and not to the trees standing out above the canopy. The tricky thing to keep in mind, therefore, is that if you earnestly seek truth, you have to look for what is going to work for the majority of the population rather than just the genetic exceptions.